Hello and welcome to the Power of No live series. I'm Helen Renevik, a visionary coach and consultant and the creator of Power of No Without Guilt. It's a program designed to help high achieving givers set boundaries clearly and confidently without the guilt. And today's episode is titled, it was titled after my guest, because that's what I feel, the power of charisma without people pleasing. So I'm so excited to be joined by Gwenne Wilcox. And she is a powerhouse in brand leadership and the creator of the Captive 8 framework. Gwen is a fractional Chief Brand Officer, you have to correct me if I say wrong, who helps high level founders and leaders to reclaim their boldest brand voice and their energy. So today we are going to dive into what it really means to show up with charisma, not as performance, but as a grounded presence rooted in truth and clarity. So if you have ever felt like you're over delivering just to be seen or liked, this conversation is for you. So welcome.
It's a pleasure to be here. I feel so honored to be invited and to talk about something I'm very, very passionate about, as you know, because that's how we first connected, was about our messaging and finding that synergy.
And since then, we have had a few conversations. So when I'm not going to ask this. I'm going to ask you.
And I just want to give a shout out, though, to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And thank you for any of you and all of you that are here. But this is the power of connection here that I have made, and Helen has been one of them, to make very, very authentic, genuine connections and friendships. And I'm sure if we lived in the same in the same area, we would be having coffee all the time.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yes. So I want to ask the first question, Gwen. When you hear the phrase, the power of no without guilt, what does that bring up for you personally and professionally?
Personally, the power of no without guilt gives me already the permission. It's kind of like if you get an invitation someplace, it's like if it says, black tie attire. To me, that's what it is the invitation to completely be myself without any preconceived filter. I don't have to filter myself. I can show up as sparkly and be who I am.
I love
So that's
that.
personally. Yeah, personally. Professionally, the power of no without guilt is claiming your authority even when it could be threatening to those around you.
Could be threatening. That is, those words there might stir something and.
Because in the corporate confines, there's supposed to be a deference to the leader. And so if you say, no, I don't think that's a good direction, you get a reaction like, it could be audible or could be inaudible, which means there's dead quiet.
That sounds scary.
That is meant as an undercurrent of shame. Like you should know to correct yourself. So I think it's very, very important in leadership and to show your power to do it in a way that says that you have respect. And out of that respect, you want to give the best information and the best feedback. Wow. And let it fall where it is.
That's deep. I will re-listen to that afterwards too.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to ask you a question. So you
Yes.
help many high-level leaders step into that bold, authentic
Mm-hmm.
brand voice. Where do you see people pleasing sneak in, at any level, even at the top?
I see it in the prescribed idea that someone has to abandon their personal brand and exchange it, like sort of like, it's almost like you like think of it as a window in a bank. You're giving away yourself and you're taking on the account and the persona of the corporation, which is not a being. It is a symbol of something. So over time, what I see a lot is people say, I kind of lost myself. It's kind of like being in a relationship where a person is more dominant and you're doing everything they want to do and you're talking the way they talk. So you lose your speech, you lose your frame of reference, and you also lose your joy. And
I see
that's what I
myself
find.
there a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
or what I was before. Because, like you said, when you are, especially when you're in a corporation, you have certain
Mm-hmm.
frame. You have to stay within this. You have to speak a certain way. And I guess, I mean, you have been in advertising. I was also, although I was an FMCG, but I also had. So it was a certain language that you speak, that you have to step in and be that. But now, so not but, and now when I'm not there and you are not there, part of a corporation either, has it
Mm-hmm.
changed? Because now you can be your authentic brand voice when you have your own company, because sometimes you have to kind of.
Mm-hmm. I think it's always been difficult for me to wear the costume that I was given. So I hate to say this, but I'm probably was a little bit problematic because I didn't do that. And
You weren't that good, girl. I like it.
no, I wasn't. And I brought my sense of humor into it. So I think that's what it was, is I didn't lose myself and they couldn't shake it off of me. I brought laughter. And as a matter of fact, the last day of my last corporate job, I said to everyone, it was really interesting. There was a whole bunch of people collected outside my office, which kind of shocked me because none of these people really would stand up for me or whatever, but there they were, very quietly, like standing there. And so as I walked out, I said very loudly, "You're going to miss my laughter." And because I would always find the fun, I would always switch and reframe things. And my own team said to me, even in the worst, because we had in the last corporate job, there had been a management turnover 4 times in 1 year.
Wow. Four
And
times.
4 times. And my team, one day, I didn't really like the idea of people wearing their AirPods and listening to music, because then you have to say something 4 times because I can't see that you're wearing them. So then I have to say something and then I get closer and closer and, but at some point my team came to me and they said, "Listen, we know that this is not something you really like, but there's so much negativity around us that we have to block it out because we're having a good time." And even in the face of, they were going through chapter 11, we had fun. We found fun. But I think that, I forget, I was going to think of a story when you first said that and I've forgotten the story, but I do remember there was one point where I was in a meeting with 2 people. One was representing one division and the one was representing the other one. And there was this undercurrent going on. And I finally did this and I was sitting in the middle and I started just doing this. I started going, like, hitting my head. And they went, what are you doing? And I said, this is the company. This is you. This is you, the other part. And they said, and you're doing this, but it's all for the same company. There's no sides. There's no two entities. It's one. And it was so disruptive the way that I did it without stepping into the, the gamemanship or whatever. It was just disruptive. And then we had to
Disruptive and being present, because actually I had the
Yes.
next question here, and this is what you are describing. Okay. Gwen, she is one of a kind. Not everyone is that, I wasn't like that. I was more, the people. I have been a very good people pleaser. I wanted to be the good performing person within, and but so I said here, because you said, you were standing out, and that's usually what happens, if you're performing, instead of being yourself, that's for the audience, and then you're not truly present, exactly like you said there. So what did you learn from that experience, or the other people maybe said afterwards that they learned something from there?
I think it was kind of scary for some people because it's very courageous to do that. And I was willing, I just didn't want to lose myself. And I'm not afraid of confrontation. I'm not afraid of confrontation. And
where does that come from?
I have no idea. My mother used to tell me I was like that from very little. I was very tenacious, and I wouldn't move off of my position unless the opposing position made sense. So do it because I say so doesn't make sense. Okay. Because we've always done it this way doesn't make sense. And I did a post recently where it's the one where you see the word cheese spelled backwards. It's because I went,
I was look for it. You have to put it in the comments down
below. Okay, I will.
After, yeah.
And I saved a company $500,000 in production costs by spelling cheese backwards. And real quick story, I was just freelancing, and you know how you see something and then you say, oh, they've probably already visited this. I don't need to ask. But finally, I couldn't stand it anymore. And I said, I don't understand why we have to flop the photo and why can't we just flop the photo instead of, taking it down and rebuilding it? Because it would take 3 hours to relight it. And then they said, oh, well, it's because of the block of cheese. The cheese will be spelled backwards. And I said, well, is that real cheese? And they said, oh, no, it's just a wooden block with a comp of a label on it. So I said, well, can't we ask the art department to go into Photoshop and flop the artwork backwards so that we just have to rewrap the wooden block of cheese? Not real cheese. Yes. And then all we have to do is flop the picture, and then it'll be spelled correctly. And this is what I talk about. There was silence. And somebody said, well, I'm not going to be the one to ask that. And I said, you know what? I'm the freelancer. I'll die on the sword for this one. Like, it just seemed like everyone was scared to death. And I called the art department, and the guy in the other end got really quiet. And I thought, wow, what have I done? And he said, oh my God, I've worked here 16 years and nobody's thought of that. Like, I'll get them right out to you. And we tripled the shot count for the day. Of course, I was the enemy of the food stylists and the photographers, because instead of a 6-week photo shoot, it was a 3-week photo shoot. And this I didn't get, but it increased, productivity. So that's what I mean. It's like having the courage to say the thing that no one's saying out loud.
That's you.
That's
and there's
me.
not many. And that, you see, you say that's the question. So a lot of professionals believe that they, if they don't say yes to everything, they lose that momentum of respect. I mean, obviously you are not there to please anyone, but what would you say to someone who is stuck in that mindset? Because you are not there, but if you would look at someone else, because a lot of people, I'm sure other people there would just say, okay, yeah, it's fine, but you didn't. You looked at it totally different. But
Well, I think it's part of it is I think we're too busy to run through the conversation without stopping for a moment and finding out, well, I guess people are afraid to ask clarifying questions.
yeah.
So I would say I would encourage people to slow down. Just slow down. Don't say yes right away. Just say, well, can you help me understand? Is this a time constraint? Is this a financial constraint? Is this a bandwidth? Try to identify what it is, because sometimes people will just want to fix it quickly, and they usually will ask the busiest person, because the busiest person is the one that always shows up and always does it.
And maybe that's
right?
not the right person to ask.
Well, but that's the go-to, because it's the person that says yes, the person that gets it done. Those people at work, they make it sound like it's too hard. This is like, sorry to pick on IT people, but you guys know what I'm talking about when you say, well, yeah, but it's going to take a lot of time. And so it's really easy to put, a lid on something when you know that not everybody else has that same knowledge. But I would say to those people, try to keep qualifying what it is that is the problem, rather than just, I need a body, stick it there. Because otherwise, all that does is train people to keep solving the problem or serving the problem rather than finding the
Serving
solution.
the problem. That's,
Yeah.
So yes, to take that, and that's something in the Power of No, what we were going to do, just to take that pause. Because at school, if a teacher is asking, we have all like, oh yes, I have the question, I have the answer. We are just kind of programmed, a lot of people, that we should just answer right away. If you have the answer right away, that's a very clever thing. However, if we would take time, just maybe, 1 minute, not just, oh, I have the answer. No, it's, take a, like you said, just pause, and think of a few things and then answer. And that's also because maybe then you don't have to say yes right away. You could say, no, right now, I don't have the time. I can come back to you tomorrow or whenever. But a lot of people don't do that, because we are kind of wired from school. And I think it's, in most school system, that we are encouraged to answer a question right away. So that's a really good thing, to pause.
And I used to notice the people, like, when you would have a meeting, I would notice the people who would sit back in their chair. There's always the people that are leaning. There's the people whose bodies are touching the table. Those are going to be the ones who, I've got a question, right. Then there's the people who are kind of hunched over, and they've got their hands in the lap. And if there was a bubble over their head, it would say, please don't call on me. And then there are the people who are leaning back. They usually have one arm on the table, and their head's kind of tilted, and they're listening, but they don't speak unless they're asked to speak.
And who are they?
And I call them the scissor people. So there's the rock people, the paper people, and the scissor people. And the scissor people are the ones that their main motivation is to be of service. So they're listening to see how they can be of service. And I'll give you an example. Let's say, and they ask weird questions, if they ask any questions at all.
So
and
interesting.
I'm sorry to kind of go off tangent here, but let's say there was an exit ramp on a freeway, and the exit ramp needed to move. And they're and they needed it to happen by a certain day. And they have restricted help. They're going to have restricted time to work on it because there's traffic. Okay. The paper person's going to say, well, we can't make that happen because, or that's going to be a problem because, and they're going to start to tell you, there aren't enough hours in a day. There aren't, right? The rock person is going to say, why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? And they're going to just come out with a bunch of ideas that they haven't really thought through, but they're trying to solve the problem. The scissor person is going to say, maybe ask the question of how many orange cones do we have in inventory? And let's look into how much it's going to cost to rent lights at night. And everybody's like, what are they talking about? And what they're doing is they're saying, if we get a crew to work round the clock at night, we could get more work done at the night. So we can, they're looking for the answer through what is actually needed. They're not looking at, let's fix it. They're not looking at why it can't happen. They're looking at what are the things that we don't currently have that we need to have. And where and how can we move it? So they're kind of like the fulcrum. If you, I don't know if you call it in your country a teeter-totter or a seesaw.
Yeah, seesaw, yeah.
Right? They're the ones that keep everybody
balanced.
Level. Yeah. And so if there was someone in a meeting that wasn't talking out loud, I would talk to them after and say, I didn't hear you. So I'm really curious what you thought. And then they'll say, because they knew that the person leading the meeting wants performative answers. And so they didn't say, because you can feel it in the room, whether someone's just looking for all the head nods, right?
So maybe those are the people pleasers.
Yes. Or they just want consensus, Yeah. Yes, the go-to person gets it done, always saving the day. And that's the other thing I want to talk about too. There is something called the savior complex. Some people have that. It's also the hero complex. They'll either create a problem or they won't give all the information so that they swoop in at the last minute and save the day and fix it. And it can shine a light on somebody else's faults. And then that person becomes afraid to speak up or to try again. And so therein, what I said, again, you keep serving the problem. So
thank you for all this. I'm learning so many different terminology now. And so the last question, then I'm going to ask you something else. So
yes.
What have you seen shift in your leadership when you have always been that, not the overgiver, and start showing up with clearer, firmer boundaries? Have you always done that, or did you over time start to do this?
From my own background, and we know in some of us, I'll just say it right here. I grew up in a very chaotic, traumatic household. And so I grew up thinking that I was responsible for a lot of the dysregulation, emotional dysregulation. So I learned once when a friend of mine, I asked her to come and work with me. I said, let's just hang out together. I'll fly you out, but I need help on this project. And she did. And as she was working, she started sighing. I heard it go. And every time I heard that, I would go in and say, you know what? Instead of working on this, why don't you work on this? And I took it away from her. And I kept doing that. And at some point, I felt the tension in the room. And I said, okay, something's going on. And she said, I feel like I'm not doing anything right. You keep taking things away from me. And I started laughing. I'm like, oh my God, if you knew what was going on in my mind. And I told her, I heard you sigh, and that was a trigger to me that I needed to fix your feelings.
You're the
And
fixer.
I was the fixer. And so I would always run up first, or I would do it with them or do it for them, thinking I was helping, when in fact I was taking their power away. So what I've had to learn to do is, you've probably heard this term, is lead from the back of the room. Don't steal away someone's failure or their success, because if they fail and you give cushion for them to fail, so they feel like there's a net. You don't ever throw them under the bus, but you give them an absolute, like, okay, if anything, you're having an issue with something, you can't get conclusion, you can't meet this deadline, I need to know at this time, because after that time, it's DEFCON 1, suddenly, right? It's a nuclear problem. Please don't let it get to that. And so now you've given them an out. I always liken it to the analogy of, if you're training a horse to jump over those bars, right? You never put the bar so high that you're going to spook the horse or get the rider's
Then
going
they
to get
will never
thrown.
do it.
Yeah, they'll never do it again. So you want to do it just enough so it's a challenge, but you want to give them enough runway to make the jump. And they'll a horse will stop if they can't. Well, that's that deadline you give them, and then you come in and you do a we thing, not a I'll take that from you. And I think that is what I learned to do. So I would ask my team, what is it that you want to do more of? And I would preface that with, nobody gets to do 100% of only what they want to do. So if we could change your tasks to 60% of what you like to do, right? What would that be? And how can we get you there?
That's lovely.
And then we would work towards that.
If more leaders could be like that.
Yeah. And it's just, this is going to sound silly, but I did parenting the same way. I became the mother I wish I had. And I think, just be the boss you wish you had.
And like you said, leader is both at home, at work, be that person that leads. So time is coming almost to, time goes.
Oh my gosh, I didn't even talk about all the things I had here.
No, but you're going to be back. Not back. We will return after I have done this month. Then we will have so many other things, because so many people can learn just from what you have lived through. When we share what we have lived through, there's so much wisdom there. So much wisdom. So what's the last few words you would like to leave to the audience?
I would like to, I guess I would say, one of the things I shared with Helen before we started is, what if I told you that your biggest personality trait, or your big, bold move, is the one that got you in trouble as a child? And I would say, dial that up, revisit that, because that is your star. What do I call this? Your star power. And star means your story. T is for your trust. So you want to expose your flaws. Please don't pretend you're perfect. Okay. I tell all of my team, I do malapropisms. I will screw up words and I'll be totally serious. And it's just something I do, So, and then attributes, lean into your attributes, the way you speak, the things, your own mannerisms, just really embrace who you are. And the last one is resonance. You want to make sure that you have impact, emotion, and that is that it's more than relatable. It's relating in a way that makes someone feel something that you universally share. And I would say, that's how you're a star. A star leader is actually by being vulnerable in that way, but it's like vulnerable with offense. It's not the same as
That's rich. So we're going to leave that down in the
okay.
comments so people can actually go and look at that and, you know, lean into what you were known for, maybe annoying people when you were younger, because maybe that
Mm-hmm.
is your star quality. Thank you
Yep.
so much, Gwen. It was
Thank you for
rich,
having me.
honest, and deeply energizing. You are going to
Mm-hmm.
return and have
Okay.
another conversation. So many people that might be watching this in the future or right now are carrying the weight of showing up perfectly,
Mm-hmm.
when what they really need is permission to lead more simply, more clearly, and more powerfully, just by being themselves, like Gwen was saying. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what actually the power of no without guilt is all about: helping
Mm-hmm.
people reclaim their time, their energy, and their clarity without, the fear or apology. So you can join the waitlist down in the comments. And next Thursday, I will be here again with another conversation in this series. So remember, your charisma doesn't come from doing more, it comes from being aligned. Thank you, everyone. And thank you again for coming on today.
Yes. And we see someone saying that. Could the session be extended by 10 minutes?
Where I don't see anyone.
Yeah.
Mm.
Could the session be extended by 10 minutes, please, if suitable for everyone? This is really helpful and insightful. To this person that wrote that, do you mean this particular episode or those coming up?
No, what we will do, yes, we will say, I
Yeah.
can't see, it only says LinkedIn user. Put,
Yeah.
what you heard and what, you would like to know more, and we will return.
Perfect. Okay.
So
Great.
please, if you have any questions, because it only comes up as LinkedIn user. So whoever said, could the session be extended by 10 minutes, please, if suitable for everyone? This will be really helpful and insightful. I am very, very strict with time, because
Yes.
time is respect for the audience, for my guest, and for myself. And we only have 1,440 minutes a day. However, we will return again with your questions and we will answer them.